Yeah. So okay. So we've talked marketing, we've talked mindset, we've talked starting to kind of delegate and to get off the field. What do you think, like where you are right now, looking back at the last 10 months, what do you think has been the number one kind of key to be where you're at now? Because you're kind of having like month on month growth consistently, right?
Yeah.
Like within your team, within your jobs, within your revenue, within your profits. What do you think has been like the key to that success?
I think marketing had a big thing to do with it, and just the systemisation. I was always adamant that I needed systems in place to be able to handle the amount of work that I was shooting for. So I wanted to be able to do 3 and 4 jobs a week with 6 or 7 guys, but I needed systems to do that. Otherwise, it would just be complete chaos. We'll all be just running around, not knowing where we're going to go. So I think systems and lead generation are probably the most important thing for me, just to really keep track of what we're doing, and because it's no good chasing the leads and then having 50 leads a day turn up and not having a system to be able to manage them, because they just end up lost in your diary. You end up with a diary that every page has all this data on it, and you're forever flicking back through and, oh, where's that person's name? Where's this person's name? So I implemented Pipedrive around April, I think.
Yeah.
And I've got 3 different deal funnels or deal pipes for different projects that we do. And everyone that we speak to goes into Pipedrive. So, and I've got Pipedrive set up with a Zap for Xero, and we do all our quoting from Xero. So whenever I go to quote somebody, all their details are already in Xero. So when we put together the quote, it all self-populates. And whenever I need to talk to somebody, I just pull their details up on Pipedrive, and all their data is already there. We know where they are in their deal process, and I can bring it up on my computer at any one time, and I can see what deals are rotting, what clients we haven't been able to speak to yet. We keep a lot of notes in there as well, so I can go in and say, okay, well, we've called this person 3 times, 3 voicemail messages left, or can't get onto them. Okay, well, we can sort of shuffle them to the side, or archive that contact and keep our live contacts right in front of us. That way you're prompted as to what leads are hot and what leads are cold. So I think I've always been big on systems, because I don't know about anyone else, but I can only remember about a dozen things at once, and then stuff starts to fall out one side. So I find that if I can set things up that prompt me and I don't have to remember so much data at any one time, it frees me up for more creative work, I suppose. I don't get bogged down in the details. So Pipedrive and systems have been a massive thing for us to be able to handle all of those leads. We did a trade show in September where we ran a competition. We got 150 entries to that competition, and then we had to set about it, sit down and figure out how to contact all those people and service all of them. And I think we picked up about 8 or 10 jobs out of that within a week of the trade show finishing. So without Pipedrive and having all that data on hand whenever we needed it, there was no way that we could have managed 150 entries for a competition just using our diaries and pen and paper. So it takes a little bit to set up and get your head around, but once they're there, I lean on it a lot, and it's really a godsend at some times.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting point you raise, that I kind of see most people's businesses as leaking buckets.
Yeah.
Right? And what I also see is most business owners are so busy running to the sink to get a cup of water to fill their bucket. Yet the bucket's leaking kind of quicker than what they're able to put money in the top. Water both in the top of these buckets.
Yeah.
And often the solution is actually spending the time to plug up some of these holes in the bucket. Yet what that means is that when you're plugging up the holes in the bucket, you're not running to get water.
That's right. Yeah.
So what that also means is that once some of those holes are plugged up and you go get water, the water lasts longer, which allows you then to plug more holes up. And the reason I kind of use that example is that, you know, you mentioned setting up pipe drive took some time, and it's time that very much was not spent generating leads or being on sales calls, delivering jobs.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to get caught up in the mindset that that time that you're investing in setting that system up is wasted time, or time that you're not spending hunting and gathering.
Yeah, yeah.
Yet what it's actually meant is that once that system's set up, it's allowed that when you've gone out there and hunted, or when you've gone out there and got more water for your bucket, the water's lasted longer, and the water's actually turned into greater growth for your business because you've spent that time up front.
Yep.
And this is where I kind of see it in the beginning. You know, 80% of your time should be spent on sales and marketing, and 20% should be spent on other areas of the business.
Yeah.
And as we start to grow, as we start to nail down a system, because marketing and sales is a system, right? Facebook ads are a system. Once we have a system that's working, then we can take some of that time, whether you delegate them out or whether you keep managing it. You know, we have one campaign, it's ran for 2 years, and I'm lucky to spend like 10 minutes a month optimizing this one campaign. Like, it is a trooper. It just brings leads in like every day of the week with like very little management. Super lucky, right? Other campaigns, it's like you're in there every day trying to get them to work. But, you know, you invest that time into going, okay, well, where's the next growth opportunity for the business? Like, where's the next system I can create? Where's the next process I can put in place? What's the next hire that's going to get me leverage to the next level quick enough? Because realistically, like, if you look at being a business owner, essentially you're an asset manager. Right, so you've got like a finance manager that manages your financial assets, right? And their kind of job is to get you the most amount of growth with the finances that you're investing, right? Shares, property, whatever it is. As business owners, we're asset managers. So the assets we're managing, though, happens to be like our time and our money, our staff's time, and our business's money.
Yeah.
And the better you can manage those assets or those resources, the more you're able to leverage your growth. And it's a bit of a different way of looking at business, but I think it's a more accurate way of disassociating yourself from being so stuck in business in the day-to-day and the norms. And, you know, almost what I see a lot is people having an employee mindset while owning their own business, which is I have to do the work. I have to go and put an 8-hour day on the tools to be profitable. Yet if they spent 8 hours managing resources or managing assets, their business can grow a lot faster. Karen's got here, you've done amazingly at setting up your systems. Yeah, totally. Did you do all of that yourself, or did you seek outside help with systems, like with your pipe drive?
Pipe drive I set up myself. It's very intuitive and very easy. I found it very easy to use. Xero is a little harder. I just spoke to my accountant. They use it all the time. So if I ever get stuck, I reach out to them. And pipe drive, Xero is something I'm probably not using to its full effect. I'm actually in the process of looking for a bookkeeper who can manage all of that so I can pull the data out that I need, especially profitability and profitability per project. It's not really being tracked as efficiently at the moment. But yeah, mostly I just hunted around for what worked for me and then tried it and then implemented it and just sort of bring things on slowly, so one at a time, without trying to bite too much off. Otherwise I'd just get overwhelmed if I'm trying to learn 2 or 3 different software systems at once. I just get confused. So I just focus on one until I can use it and get some. So even if I know 50% of it and I can use it efficiently, then you can sort of continue to learn with that one, and then you can bring something else on. So yeah, just bit by bit, just sort of jumping in and figuring things out and using them just daily. I've found that if I look at pipe drive daily, first time I looked at it, it looked like Chinese, but now it's like the Matrix. You look in there and it all sort of comes out at you, and you can see the pretty lady in the red dress walking down the street. But my works manager uses it, and he's still looking at Chinese. So that's a big thing as well, is educating my guys on using it as well, so they're up to speed. So some of my tradies were still doing quotes with pen and paper when they started with me. So that's been a bit of a learning curve for them, especially. I like to run as much as we can digital, and I've moved all of our quotes to digital as well, and all our contacts are all digital. So that's been a bit of a learning curve as well, is to bringing all my employees up to speed with the way that we do things. I'll definitely have a chat with you, Karen, about the zero contact. That'd be really well appreciated.
You said you also look very calm, like a true conductor of the business.
That's pretty much a 50-50 mix between exhaustion and zen. So.
So Pete said, do you have a digital checklist or anything like that your staff use in the field?
I have just a simple form that we use that we go through and just check, which is like a building inspection form. And then once we get that back to the office, I superimpose it into what we need from it. So that's something that we're going to be putting in process, is a digital form. That's something I'm still looking to figure out how to do efficiently. So if anyone out there knows of some good form software, my 7-year-old daughter said that she can build one in Google Drive for me in about 3 minutes.
Yeah, so I'd be using Google Forms, G Forms, or
Okay.
because you could also zap them into Pipedrive. So just to give you a snapshot, we've spent I reckon 12 months we've spent on our onboarding process, and it's finally at a level where it's kicking serious ass. And our whole entire onboard process is driven by a Google form.
Okay.
So essentially what happens is once a sale's been made, all details are filled out on a Google form, and that's connected through Zapier to Stripe. So it takes payment in Stripe. Puts all their details into a client care spreadsheet that has all the details of the client. It triggers our onboarding email sequence, which the first email is like a contract agreement to sign. Yep. Once the agreement's signed, that allows the other emails to start coming, but until the agreement's signed, nothing else happens.
That's your trigger.
It also puts them into Xero, so it sets them up in Xero, and it also puts a project plan into Asana. So there's an alert for client care, and they have a project plan that they go through and manually check off to make sure that the automation is happening. Because automation is great, but if we just sat back and forgot about it, there's a chance that the technology stuffs up, things happen. So we kind of have like a manual sequence that follows an automated one, which literally is just a staff member checks in every day to make sure the client is where they need to be on the journey. Okay. So that if a client gets an agreement and they haven't filled it out in 48 hours, they get another phone call from the sales team to kind of say, hey, what's going on, what's held up? Because at that point that they're making a buying decision, they're ready to rock and roll. So we've done enough testing and measuring to know how people should be moving at each stage. So Google Form is something that very much, it's got awesome API integration in the back with Zapier. You can have that go into anything, including obviously your Pipedrive and Xero and so forth.
Cool. Yeah.
So Pete said, nice, we have problems with this as all jobs are different. We have staff that leave lights on and doors open and won't have a checklist to ensure everything's done on time. Yeah. What you probably realise, Pete, is although you have so many different jobs, there is still some fundamentals, I think. And having a checklist in itself is going to bring a conscious awareness to how those guys leaving the jobs.
Repetition as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing too, Pete, is if it becomes an ongoing issue, you could actually tie incentives to like 100% job completion score. So, you could make up metrics where if they leave a door open, that's -10 or a light on -5. And based on that 100% is how much of a bonus they get at the end of the quarter, right? So there could be a percentage of profits that go into a bonus pot, and then the quarter gets divided between your team. And divide between your team in order of quality assurance score or something like that. Like I remember with my kitchen business, we had an issue because the guys would leave the job and say it was amazing and the client was happy, and the client would call us up a week later with some issues, right? Never anything major. But what we started doing is getting the client to walk around the job with the staff member and sign off on the job. And what that meant is that the client couldn't come back to us a week later and say, hey, this wasn't done. they also didn't. They also couldn't delay payments because they'd signed an acknowledgement to say that the job is completed and fit for payment.
Yeah, that's a really important one, especially when you're looking at a post-payment sort of process like what you're doing with the trades and service provider industry. And unless you make sure people are happy at the end of the job, they do invariably they'll hang on to their money for as long as they can.
Yeah. How have you gone with payment, Tim? Have you had any issues with people delaying payments, not paying?
Not really. Maybe only once or twice. I don't demand, but I require 20% deposit straight up before we even start.
Yeah.
Just to cover any of my costs, any of our outgoings. I figure if people don't have it up front, they're not going to have it in 4 days when we're finished. So, and I found that engages people a lot more, and we haven't had any pushback at all. We went from 10% to 20% mid-year, and that just gives us a bit more of a safety net and coverage, and helps the cash flow. I can pretty much get all of the materials we need for a job out of that deposit, and that covers any problems that we may have down the track if people do decide to delay repayment.
You may want to, as you guys scale, cash is going to become even more important because you're going to be exposed to a lot more risks.
Yeah.
You may look at going 50%. Like I usually recommend within trades businesses 50% up front. Because as I said, like if they can't afford to pay 50% up front, they're not serious about you working with them. Like if they have trust issues, number one, they're going to become a pain in the ass later on. They trust you enough to do the job, they can pay you half of it. Number two, if they haven't got 50% to pay you, they probably haven't got the amount to pay you when it's complete anyway.
That's right. Yeah, that's correct. And that's the last thing you want, especially with paint. You can't really go on, or kitchens are the same. You can't go and pull it back out at the end of the job or ask for a refund. So it's very conscious of that, because we've all heard the horror stories of people doing far too much work and not getting enough money for it, and end up hamstrung. Got some good mates in trades who have gotten themselves into that situation with bigger clients, and some of the multinational businesses and those sorts of things don't pay for 30 or 40 days. We're doing some government work at the moment that is paid about 30 days later, which is a bit of a stretch for us. So we take we require all the clients' commitment up front on that one. So that's a 25% deposit on those jobs that we're doing for the housing resilience program at the moment, which is a massive boon for us at the moment.
Yeah. I have 2 questions, and then over to you guys if you've got any more questions, or Tim, equally to you if you feel to share anything else. First question is, like, how do you structure your weeks? Like, have you got a kind of a set structure where you work on particular things in your business to make sure things get done? Like, how does your week structure look?
So Fridays for me are usually my office day, and usually Mondays are as well. I'll have a team meeting on Monday just to make sure that everyone knows what the week ahead is coming up and what tasks we've got to do. That way all the guys can start planning their weeks mentally as well, so that they can plan out whatever they need to do after work and those sorts of things. And they know they have the expectations are aligned with what my expectations are. So some weeks will be really big weeks for us, and it'll be all steam ahead, all systems going. Other weeks will be a bit quieter, and I'll let the guys know that this week, okay, it's a quiet week. We're planning for a big week next week. So these are the things that we need to get done. These are the must-dos that we must get done. These are the boxes that we need to tick, and anything else that comes up, we just slot in. So it's fairly fluid and dynamic because it can change on a dime. Try and plan any jobs that we're doing. So we do re-roof work as well for the government at the moment. So try and plan those about 2 weeks out. That way we know. I fly a roofer up from Brisbane every fortnight to help us with that. So he manages those jobs. And so at the moment, lately, 1 week has been planning, and we do our restoration work and our spray work on that week. And then the following week it'll all be re-roof work. We're doing 3 re-roofs this week, which is, like Baz said, our biggest week to date. And at the start, we were doing one job every 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. So it's a big planning thing. I'll just sit down and just start noting things in my diary and planning times out, and just working fairly closely with my works manager. So he spends a lot of time out on the field and out on the jobs, and he manages that side of things, and he does all my sales as well. So it's just a matter of, we don't have as much structure at the moment because I suppose it's fairly dynamic, and I haven't really put anything in place for structure. It's just making sure that we've got what we need when we need it. And I think with the checklists is a great idea. That's something that I'm going to implement for every job. And I've been thinking about Asana for a while, just to start putting our jobs into some sort of not automated, but some sort of system where we can track process a bit more efficiently, and I can put some data in there, and our materials usage and our time usage, so we can track it at a later date.
One thing that might be better for you guys is Workflowmax. So Workflowmax is, if you Google Xero add-ons, you'll see that there's tons of add-ons to Xero. From CRMs to timesheets to job card software, project management. Workflowmax is one that we used to use for the kitchen business. Okay. You can get all your products in there. You can quote from there. So the quotes can be done in there and pushed through to Xero. Oh. But you can also manage job progress and everything within that one piece of software. So check out Workflowmax. Okay. I know that another buddy of mine, he's got a large maintenance business, huge maintenance business, doing like $6-7 million in Melbourne. And they use Workflowmax to manage all their projects, all their pricing. And that might do what you need with Xero as well, in terms of when you go and allocate a job, you can look at hours and materials versus what you actually build on it.
That's right. Yeah. That sounds great.
Yeah. So the other question I've got then is, like, I want to talk a little bit about your mindset. So I think that the marketing conversation and the structure conversation is really valuable, because I have been having a lot of calls with people lately, or checking in on people in the group lately that have kind of battled a little bit those two things. But now I want to kind of know around mindset, like, how has your mindset shifted from, where you're at 10 months ago to kind of where you're at now? Can you talk us through the journey a little bit?
Yeah, it's really, well, I've had to shift from employee to entrepreneur. And one of the things that really helped me was I read the E-Myth.
Yeah.
Explained, I think it is. Yeah. And that went through the process of moving from employee to entrepreneur and the different hats. And early on in the piece, I was wearing all hats at once, and things were going everywhere. And it was really hard to sort of focus on one thing and understand the reasons why I was doing those things. And it was pretty messy. So once I read that book, I'd highly recommend it. I could realise, okay, well, I've got my employee hat on now. I need to put my entrepreneur hat on and my management hat on, so my subconscious will switch into that role and into that mode, and I can consciously think in more linear lines, I suppose, to solve those problems. So I think that was a big shift for me, and I got some really good learnings out of the Brisbane Opulence workshop in April. That sort of cemented it for me to take me from that employee mindset where I was just doing it part-time, and it felt like a part-time job up until the time that I left the mines and hung up my work boots. And it really I was in limbo there for a few weeks, probably a couple of months, where part of me was going, what the hell am I doing? This is crazy. I've got no money coming in. It's all going out. I've got no leads. I've got 3 mouths to feed with these employees that have to be paid before I do, and I'm living off savings. So it took quite a lot of reflection, and I really had to change my mindset and go, okay, well, you're a business owner now. You have to step up and really act like one instead of being the techie or the tradie who's doing the work. You need to build this thing and get it rolling like a professional business. And once that switch flicked, it was almost rudimentary after that. Then my whole mindset was, okay, well, let's get these processes professional. Let's make this. Let's operate at the highest level that we can. Let's set up a professional outfit, I guess. And the book really talks about setting your business up as like a franchise. So anyone that's new that comes in can pretty much, okay, well, this is your onboarding book. Once you read that, you're good to go. So they use McDonald's a lot as an example. And I started sort of thinking along those lateral lines. Okay, well, if I wanted to set up a sister business, what would I need to do if I wasn't going to be there, if I was going to set up another business in Cairns or Brisbane or wherever? And I just followed that sort of those lines, that if I needed somebody to do things without me having to do them, then I've got to create these systems and these processes. So that's still a work in progress, where I've got to get it all documented. But that's the way I'd like for it all to go, and that's been the mindset for since April, I'd say, that if I'm going to build a business, then I may as well build it that I can duplicate it and one day franchise it if I need to. And I don't think, well, if I build the business efficiently enough and runs efficiently enough, I can sell anything. So we can sell paper clips, and it doesn't really matter what the product is, as long as all our services and our sales and advertising and our delivery techniques are on point, then it doesn't matter what we're in. And then that takes me into a whole other realm, like once you get one business running well, then there's nothing stopping you from getting another one and moving 100%. In a different direction and branching out into different products. I'm looking at some nanotechnology now for solar panel coatings and those sorts of things, which is an Australian first product, which is pretty interesting. Looking at getting some testing done on those sorts of things. But now that I've got some systems going, I can start to replicate those into other areas, and that really opens up the horizon and opens up the opportunities. So that's the biggest bit of advice I could give, is get your systems in place so your business can run very efficiently without having to delegate 100% of mindset every part of the day. Try and set it up so you've got these prompts and checklists, and you don't have to remember that person's name 6 months down the track. You can just find the address or the last name or the phone number, and it's all there in your database. So especially when you're dealing with multiple people, that was the biggest thing. It was all right when we were dealing with 1 or 2 leads a week, but we're dealing with 2 or 3 a day now. It gets pretty messy, and you've got people and dates and addresses and colours and all sorts of data running around. And I realised early on that there was no way I could even contemplate remembering all of this stuff, and especially 3 or 4 months down the track, if we get a warranty claim, somebody calls up. So the systems have been a really big driving factor behind the scalability, and I think that's one of the secrets for us. Is if I get the systems all right, scalability is just a decision then of how far we go. You just turn the volume up. Yeah. Pardon?
The systems will set you free.
They will. I'll set you free. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's cool. There's been a lot of really cool sharings, and what I'd love to know is, like, what questions have you guys got left unanswered for Tim? And Tim, is there anything, while the guys are typing in their questions, is there anything that you feel needs to be shared that we haven't yet talked about?
Don't be afraid to make mistakes. I know Robert Kiyosaki and Tony Robbins, they all stroke it. But until you get used to making mistakes and just jump into the pool and figure out how to swim afterwards, you might find that you're really good at holding your breath. You don't need to swim that well. But until you do it, you can read all the books in the world, and there's no greater teacher better than just jumping into something. I've done that since I was a teenager, and I've had some spectacular fails and learned some fantastic lessons along the way. And it's taken quite a bit of conditioning, I suppose, to train my mindset to take the lessons from the fails and celebrate. I learned a long time ago when I was playing in the property game that you need to celebrate your fails just as much as you celebrate your wins, because if you win all the time, you've got the Midas touch, and that only takes you so far, and you don't learn the lessons unless you fail.
And you're possibly not playing a big enough game if you're always winning either.
Well, that's right. And if you haven't got the lessons, you go into that next game, you get burnt and you crash hard.
Yeah.
That's talking from experience. Yeah.
You're like an under 18, you're competing against the under sixes. Like it's.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't be afraid to jump in and play with the big boys. You might get battered around a bit, but you'll learn some good lessons and it'll toughen you up.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. Guys, questions. Hit us up with any questions you've got. Otherwise, we'll wrap this puppy up if no other questions. Karen said, leap of faith, love it, not being afraid to fail. And if you haven't got a question, what was the key takeaway for you? So jump in the chat, let us know what was the key takeaway and what are 3 actions that you're going to take from today's session. I know that I've written some notes down here just while speaking to you too, Tim, as well. So Karen says systems. So is that your learning? Is that your action? Or is it both? What was your key learning, guys? Yeah, Pete's the testimonial page is the key sales
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Action and takeaway. Karen, action for sure. My bucket is a bit leaky. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions you guys have? Any other comments? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. Let Tim get off and running for the day. Dan said, thanks, Tim. You built something awesome, mate. Super inspiring.
Yeah, it's been a journey. It's been really fun. I love it every moment of the day. I really enjoy it. It's to have something in your hands that you can mold as you see fit and take wherever you want is really cool. It's a really cool journey.
Yeah, yeah. Karen said she's PM'd you the zero detail. Pete does have a question. He said, how do you manage full-time staff with quiet weeks and busy weeks?
They get paid 38 hours regardless. That allows me to, well, that builds, I suppose, some equity up. That way, when I need them to man up and work really hard, then they're willing to do it because sometimes, and they know it, sometimes I'll do a 6-hour day and they'll get paid for 8 regardless. And that gives me the ability to go, okay, well, we've got a big week coming up. You can expect to be working your butt off. It's going to be hard. It's going to be long, but it's all about balance, I guess. If the guys do a 12-hour day, I'll pay them for that. But if they're doing 8.5 or whatever and working on a Saturday morning or something like that, I don't pay any overtime rates. It's all flat rate. And I think it's just all about value, give and take. I reward the guys fairly regularly with, we usually catch up somewhere after work and have a couple of beers. That's usually the best way to get tradies with a smile on their faces, a beer in their hand, and you'd be amazed how much work you can get done for a carton of beer. You can get about 6 hours work done for a carton of beer. It's a great economy, yeah.
Yeah. So Pete said we tried this a few years ago and had so much pushback on it. They just couldn't get past the thought of I have worked 8 hours and I'm not getting paid anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Tim, you raised a good point though. I think it's about building the equity up first. Like I spoke at the beginning about the Facebook group, is you've got to make deposits up front before you can expect a withdrawal.
Yeah.
Is the big one. So even though a day before they did 4 hours and got paid for 8, yeah. I think this is kind of like relationships though, is that you can't do this tit for tat thing of like one day this and one day this. Like it's a consistent thing. You've got to consistently build up that equity around, like, would you agree, Tim, over a long period of time of being, setting expectations up front, this is what's going to happen, and consistently kind of, I suppose, giving a little bit more than you expect them to take.
Yeah. But on the other hand, if they do a 10-hour day, they'll get paid for it. I don't want to have to be watching the guys' times because they're all automated. They're big boys. They need to be able to manage their own time. So I think it's just about having that expectation and having them know what your expectations are. So I've had that conversation early in the piece. some days you'll be only working 6 hours and some days you'll be working 10 or 12 hours. The big days you'll get paid for them. But if you're working, I don't expect guys to knock off. My guys don't look at their watch. They finish when the job's done, and that's been consistent from the word go. I'll pay you for the work you do, but you do the job. You were on the job until the job is finished. Sometimes we're there till 5 or 6 o'clock at night, and when you're on a results-based business and you need to deliver to clients, then that's the only way to do it. If guys are knocking off at 3:30 because the clock says so, you're leaving yourself wide open, especially doing what we're doing. You've got to make sure that the job site is safe, and it's like a builder knocking off at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and only having half the roof off, half the job done and half the windows in or something like that.
I think it's important though. It's just important though that you have the right margins in your work. Like if your margins are so skinny, Pete, it makes it very, very difficult to run a system like this, and I wouldn't recommend it either because you're going to lose money.
Yeah.
If your margins are very, very skinny, there needs to almost be a leverage against performance because the guys are working too long on delivering a particular job. That's going to suck your profit up. That there needs to be some sort of compensation from their side. Either A, you're quoting the job wrong, or B, if you're quoting the job accurately and they're taking the piss, that needs to be leveraged back to their income. But in Tim's case, I think in most tradies businesses, there should be a fat enough margin. Like you can choose to whether you want to play on the cheaper side or the higher end side. Like it's up to you where you want to fit in the marketplace. There's clients that exist the whole way through.
That's right.
Clients that want the cheaper, the most expensive of the highest price. It's up to you guys where you want to play. But I would, without a doubt, recommend you playing in the top kind of percentile because that's going to allow you better margins, allow you to better look after your team, which ultimately there's a kind of rule of thumb that as a business owner, that if you look after your team well, your team look after your clients look after you.
That's right.
As a business owner. So it's a revolving cycle. And the first point of that is you looking after your staff well, and providing you do that, your staff will look after your clients who ultimately look after your business.
But I set expectations daily that, okay, we're going to do this job. I expect it's going to take this long. Do you agree? Okay, well, I expect it to be done by that time. And at the end of the day, if it's not done, then I'm asking why, and I expect reasons, and all my guys understand that. But there are expectations and targets that they need to hit daily to get work done. So there's, I suppose, a fine line between cracking the whip and just getting things done efficiently. So I spend enough time on site with the guys and I'd lead by example. I'm the first one up the ladder. I'm the last one on the roof. I'm doing all the hard yards, and so I've found that you've got to lead. Well, my tradies, I lead them from the front. If they're up there in the sun working in the 40-degree heat, then I'll be right there beside them sweating it out as well. And that gives you a lot of equity as well. You can ask them for an honest day's work then, because there has been a little bit of banter lately that I'm sitting in my crystal castle in the air conditioning sipping lattes while they're out there busting their guts in the heat. So it's a bit of a fine line to make sure that you're present enough so everyone knows what your expectations are at the end of the day. Yeah.
How are you going to reward your team this year for kind of a good year's work? Have you thought about that?
I'll usually put a barbecue on for Christmas, and I just get the guys gifts, usually just BCF gift cards or something like that. Just bought one of my young offsiders a Makita kit, some cordless drills and stuff worth about $700. And I got him a pay rise just as a thank you for the hard work he's been doing, because his lip's been dragging in the ground for a little bit lately. He's learnt a lot, and I've demanded a lot of him. So I made sure that he was at the level that I needed him to be, and he really appreciates that sort of gesture now. So,
of course. Yeah. Awesome. Mate, it's been a cracker. Have you had fun?
I have. I've had a ball. Yeah.
It's so good that you can, kind of lead the way for the game changers, learn a bunch of stuff, and then come back and kind of share your learnings and gifts to everyone. Because I think this is where the real value is at, is that as a community, the more we can really share individually what we've gone through and what we've learned, the more as a group we can kind of grow together. which I think is what it's really about. So for the guys here that joined us today, stoked to have you here. Thanks for investing your time and trust. You guys got a ton of value. If there's any further questions, by all means, chuck them into the Facebook group, tag Tim, tag myself. I'll be more than happy to answer them. Karen said, yeah, this is where the value's at. Thanks so much. Totally. Totally. It'd be good if you guys kind of shared on the group too, how amazing it was, so we can try to get a few more people on them in future. But I trust there's a bunch of people watching this on the portal now as well. So Tim, mate, really appreciate your presence. Really appreciate you being an active part of the community, and thank you so much for your time and for sharing with the guys today.